Okay, for most schools, they are very different from each other. However, they are similar in the fact that most schools will have field trips for their students. These teachers will take their students on field trips to zoos, to museums, to historical places of importance, depending on what they've been studying in school. When I was in elementary school, we studied a unit on animals. So after the fact, we went to the zoo and we were able to see all of the animals that we had been studying. In a similar instance, Peter Parker, a fictional character, also went on a field trip to Oscorp Laboratories. In this laboratory, they would study animals and their reactions to radioactive material. One of the things that they studied was radioactive material in spiders, and an unfortunate event that took place was that Peter Parker was actually bit by a radioactive spider. Through this bite, he would then turn into what we now know him as Spider-Man. This as exampled by a website from www.newyork-business.com. Now, I know all this because growing up I watched the Spider-Man movies, I read the Spider-Man comics, and I even played some of the games, as I'm sure you all have as well. I have also been bit by a spider, but I can guarantee you it was not a radioactive spider because I do not have spider-like qualities. Because of this event, Peter Parker would then transform into what we now know as Spider-Man. Before he was bit, he was your typical high school teenage nerd. He lived at home with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He would go to school, and there at school, the people in school would tease him and whatnot for making straight A's and for the fact that he wasn't popular. He was a nerd, he wore glasses, all of that. He also had a crush on the cutest girl in school and only had one friend named Harry. At home, he would follow his aunt and uncle's rules to a T. He was a perfect kid. After he was bit, his body and his mind began to change. He now had muscles in places that he didn't have before. His abs, his legs, his arms were now much stronger than he was to begin with. He also had perfect vision, so he no longer needed glasses. When he would put the glasses on, his vision would become blurry. Taking them off, he could see perfect. He also took on spider-like qualities, one of these things being able to shoot webs out of his wrists. To test his spider theory, he decided to climb to the top of a roof of a skyscraper, look across, shoot a web across to a building, and swing down. Thankfully, he did not crash into the building because he figured out in midair how to extend another web and to swing through the buildings, much like Tarzan would through a jungle. He swung through the buildings. He also developed Velcro-like fingertips and toe tips to where he could crawl up walls and ceilings without being detected. Now, for a while, he only used these for his own common good, to sneak in and out of his house when he needed to, and then to also face the bullies in school. It wasn't until after his Uncle Ben was killed by a petty thief did he decide to use it for more of the good of his family and the city that he lived in. He then decided to make a uniform for himself in order to protect his body from the elements and from villains, and also to protect his identity for his friends and family's sake. He then, after that, hunted down the man that killed his Uncle Ben, and then decided to take on all the petty thieves and robbers within his city. Because of this, more and more dangerous villains came into play as he protected the city along with his policemen and firemen. One of these villains was the Green Goblin, who just so happened to be Oscorp Laboratories' owner. He became the Green Goblin and he defeated him. Now, all of these events eventually transformed Peter Parker into what we now know him as Spider-Man. He defeated the Green Goblin, eventually Dr. Octopus, and the Sandman. Now, after that, he became a local hero. For us, we have heroes nowadays too. Our heroes are our policemen who protect our streets, our firemen who protect our homes and facilities, and our military servicemen who protect our country from foreign attacks and offenses. Now, it would be nice to have a Spider-Man to protect our cities in day-to-day lives. That way we wouldn't have to worry as much about our policemen and firemen getting the job done. However, we don't live in a fictional world. We live in a realistic world. So for now, we will continue on reading Spider-Man stories and waiting to see which villain he will defeat.